Welcome once again, everybody, to Aryaloka. My name is Shadayu. This is Advayasrī. As we said earlier, this evening's a little different than our usual evening in that we'll be interviewing Advayasrī about her time in Spain on her ordination retreat. I'm gonna ask some questions initially, and then there'll be some time at the end for questions for those of you who are here in the room and on Zoom. So welcome, Advayasrī, welcome back.
Great to be here, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So this didn't just happen. You didn't just accidentally find yourself in Spain and someone said, "You look all right." We'll put a case around your neck. There was quite a lot that came before that. I'm wondering if you could say a bit about your journey to becoming a Buddhist and then what led you to actually request ordination.
Yeah, so I wanted to learn how to meditate. So I had tried meditation before and I hadn't really stuck with it. So I was listening to some talks by Thich Nhat Hanh, and he said, if you want to meditate, you need a Sangha. And I thought, well, I guess Thich Nhat Hanh probably knows what he's talking about. So I started looking around for a Sangha, and I went somewhere, a couple places, and then I came here. And I know a lot of people say that when they walk through the doors at Aryaloka, it just really feels so welcoming. And so I started coming every week. There was a lead meditation by Lila City, which I really enjoyed. And then after meditation, wow, there was a talk and some classes. So I started staying around for those. And it just so happened when I started coming was in January of 2014. And Lila City was teaching Intro to Buddhism. So I came every week for 8 weeks and I learned all the Intro to Buddhism, and I just thought it was really interesting. And so I just kept coming every Tuesday. Then I went on a retreat, which was amazing, really transformative. And then about maybe a year and a half after that, I decided to become a Mitra, which means friend. So then I started going to Mitra study with the same group of people every week and sort of delving into things more deeply. And then in 2016, late 2016, I went on a trip to India with Lila City actually as well, who had organized it. There's an order member in India who does these trips that are fantastic. If you ever are interested in going to India, I highly recommend going with Mani Dhamma. So I know other people have gone. Yeah. So I went on this trip to a lot of the Buddhist sites, like where the Buddha was born and where he was enlightened and where he taught. And also I got to go to some of the Triratna places. So we stayed at this big Triratna training center called Nagaloka, and it just really made a huge impression on me. Just the way that people were being trained and the social justice, all the activities that were going on it really blew me away. And they treated us like we were their family. Like we were just their brothers and sisters from the US, and it just felt amazing. And I really decided I really wanted to be a part of that. So I came back from that, and a few months later, I asked for ordination. So, and then there's quite a training process after you ask for ordination.
So something happened in India. So you had gotten interested in meditation, which led you through the door of actually finding the Dharma, and getting an interest in the Dharma. And that compelled you to go deeper. You ended up in India on pilgrimage, going to Buddhist holy sites, which made you want to commit your life to Buddhist practice. So was there anything in particular on the pilgrimage at a particular site that perhaps impacted you in a way that made you say yes, or was it more about the people?
I think it was a combination of things. Mani Dhamma does an amazing trip where every place that you go, you're reading some of the suttas. And so like actually, being on Vulture's Peak and doing the sevenfold puja there, it really made a big impression on me, just the way he does the the trips is amazing. But also I think it was really meeting the people and seeing the impact that Buddhism was having on the people there. It just was incredibly moving. It was just so empowering, and it just was really moving, and I just really wanted to be a part of that. And it just gave me a picture of, I'd only been to New Hampshire and Maine, and I knew some people were practicing in Boston and New York, but to see that this was a global movement with people all over the world, and I just really it felt like a force for good that I wanted to be a part of. Yeah.
Thank you for that. You've already mentioned that the ordination process takes some time, and there's different parts to it. The core of which, or the spirit of which, is actually deepening your practice and deepening your sense of going for refuge. That's the spirit of it, which Bhante Sangharakshita highlighted as the central act of really being a Buddhist and of committing oneself to a path of kindness and wisdom. So preparing for ordination into our order usually takes several years. There's a bit of work to it, yeah. There's a lot of internal work. There's retreats to go on to. There's people to befriend, things to study. And then at some point, the people that are closest to you say, guess what? You've been invited to join the order. So when that happened, when you received the invitation to ordination, did anything change for you in how you looked at Buddhist practice, or how you saw that unfolding sort of between when you got the invite and when you actually got to Spain?
I don't think my practice changed all that much. I think it was just more of a deepening and just being really more confident that people had recognized my practice and that I was effectively going for refuge. And then there was some study to do for the retreat. So there was a book called The Three Jewels that I read beforehand. And then also studying again, I had already been familiar, but studying again the 10 precepts. So when you're ordained, you take some additional precepts, some more speech precepts and some mind precepts. So you have a total of 10.
Because we need those.
We need more. We need a lot of speech and mind precepts for sure. So I was, looking at those again to make sure I really understood what I was committing myself to, really. Yeah.
And can you say a little bit during that time about the role of friendship in your practice, specifically the role of Kalyana Mitrata, or spiritual friendship?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Buddha said spiritual friendship is the whole of our practice, and it really has. It's interesting because I came here looking for meditation, not for Sangha, but it turns out that the Sangha jewel has really blazed brightly for me, and I just have felt so supportive by the people that I practice with, the people that I was in training with, everyone here. Yeah, it's been a really important part of my practice for sure.
Yeah, the Sangha jewel was last for me as well. That was the hard one, and I had to do a lot of work before ordination and after in relation to that. Skipping ahead just a little bit with this theme of spiritual friendship, have you noticed anything on the other side of being ordained? Now that you're so explicitly in a community of practitioners, a dedicated community, is there anything you've noticed in these few weeks?
It's been such a short time. I think just from the moment I entered the ordination process, I found it just amazing that all these people wanted to support me in my practice. Like, all these people are here to support me in my spiritual practice. I just found that amazing, and that's still an ongoing thing. Like, there's people around who are supporting each other in their practice. It's a beautiful thing. So I think it's just deepened more and more through this whole journey. Yeah, I haven't been here. I've only been back a month, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So going to Spain, you had a 3-month retreat ahead of you. And I believe it was when you were on the road going up to the retreat center, you received some particular news from home. So could you tell us what that news was and what the impact had on arriving at the retreat with 3 months ahead of you?
Yeah. So the news that I got was that my granddaughter had been born, and yeah. So I have to say, so back in January when I knew I was invited to come on this 3-month retreat, and I knew that my daughter-in-law was pregnant, I talked to my son and my daughter-in-law about it, and I just am so grateful that they were really supportive of me going. And the due date was before the retreat started, but if she was late or the baby was late, then I was going to miss her being born. So I was hoping and hoping that I would get to see her, but as it turned out, she was on her own timetable, which had nothing to do with my timetable. And so she was born on the day that the retreat started, which actually felt really mythic to me, that, you know, I was on this journey, this beginning journey, and she was just entering the world. And I just, even though I didn't meet her in person, I just felt this connection to her like across the miles. And I was really, really happy that it happened before the retreat started and before I had to turn my phone in, because then I got to actually see a picture of her and hear her name and, you know, be able to have that before the retreat started. But I did have to delay meeting her till I came back. Which I have now, and it's just a joy to have her. So that was kind of a significant thing that happened.
Was that at all like a pull at the beginning of it? Did you feel part of yourself wishing to be? Yeah.
I mean, it was hard. I was so happy to be on this retreat. The retreat is such a precious opportunity. And I was so torn. It was difficult to go forth from meeting her and having to delay that until I came back. But yeah, so it was hard. There were tears, for sure, but also just joy that, you know, I knew she had been born and that everything had gone smoothly and she was healthy and happy. And so, yeah, it was definitely a two-edged thing.
Yeah. I imagine there was a reassurance in the sense that you would see her on your return journey. I'm curious about the quality of, as you say, going forth. Here you are in this remote place in very simple, basic conditions, with a lot of silence and Dharma study and confession and all of that. So was there anything in relation to family and the sense of going forth into this deeper Dharma context? Was there anything that felt conflicting? And was there anything that felt at all liberating?
Well, I was really grateful that my son and daughter-in-law were so supportive of me going. Like, I think it would have been much harder. You know, I appreciated that support. And of course, there was this pull of, you know, wanting to meet her, but also knowing like she was going to be there and when I got done with the retreat. And yeah, there is a big going forth on this retreat. You give up your phone, social media, contact with the outside world, and you're miles from the nearest town down a long dirt road and living really close to the land, off the grid. So there's just solar power with a backup generator, and the water is quite scarce. So you're, you know, having to conserve water in a lot of different ways. So there's a lot of going forth into the unknown, which is really quite a practice. Yeah.
Yeah, keeping in mind those conditions in the sort of dry heat of the Spanish mountains. I know that you actually do enjoy camping. You do enjoy being in nature, hiking, and I know you've done some solitaries in a camping setting. So how did being on retreat in relatively rustic conditions compare to your experience of being in nature here closer to home, where perhaps it's a little bit wetter, maybe a few more bugs?
Yeah. Well, I mean, camping in a tent is a little more rustic than this retreat. So, you know, I had a bed, I had it inside. If it was raining, I could go sleep inside if I wanted to, or I chose to sleep in a tent for a good part of the retreat. But you don't have to sleep in a tent, you can sleep inside. And there's, you know, coffee in the morning and meals and a place to go when it's raining out. So, it's not as rustic as camping in a tent in the woods. Way more support. And it's just a whole different experience because you're living in community with people. And there's so much support. I mean, so much support for your practice. So yeah, it was really great. But one of the things I really, really loved about where I was, my campsite that I stayed in a lot of the time had this really expansive view across the valley. Well, the whole retreat center does actually. But one of my favorite things was to go outside in the middle of the night and just lie down on the ground and look at the stars, because the sky is so dark there. There's no lights at all. And you could see the Milky Way and then the moon rising. And I think, I would just lie there and think about like, okay, it feels like I'm just lying here perfectly still. But actually, the Earth is rotating at 1,000 miles an hour, and we're going around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour. And then the Milky Way is spinning at 1.3 million miles an hour. So even though I feel like I'm sitting here still, it's so still in this still night, like the reality is we're actually plummeting through space at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And it just made me think about like how much else am I seeing that's nothing, like reality is so different than what we're taking in with our senses. And it just really, I think looking at the stars so much and the clouds and the moon and the sky and the thunder and the lightning just had a really big impact on me. Just being close to nature and the beauty of the place really does impact you, especially when you have no other distractions. So like it's really fun to sit and just look at the stars and not be pulled to like, oh, did I get a text, So it made a big impression on me.
Yeah, thank you for evoking that sense of spaciousness and wonder, and the impressive particular details about the exact speeds that everything's moving at.
My dad and I looked that up for my son one time when he was younger. So
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting.
It sounds very elemental, and I know that when you're that directly in touch with the elements, that very much becomes part of your consciousness. It feels different than when you're driving in a car from one place to another. I'm curious, there's also flora and fauna present on that mountain, in that valley, and I'm curious, did you have any encounters with wildlife that that were memorable?
Well, there's a lot of vultures there. So behind the retreat center, there's this big rock, and I think the vultures nest up there. I don't know, but they're flying. There's these huge birds that are flying around a lot of the time, and that feels really mythic. There's a lot of Buddhist myths that involve vultures, and I love that. And then there was also an ibex, which is a kind of a goat with these really long horns that would come around. So that was like I'd never seen that before. Yeah, a lot of different, just so many different flowers and things that I had no idea what they were, but really, really beautiful. So different from here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
In the routines of being on retreats, I know that we can't give away any secrets, but there's a schedule to the retreat, and there's routines, and there's changes that happen around the time that you're privately ordained and all of that. So how was it in just engaging with the program and with how many other people?
There were 13 other people getting ordained, and then there was 5 people on the team leading the retreat.
Yeah. So what was it like just engaging in an intensive program for 3 months with those folks?
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, on the one hand, it's not that different from being on retreat here. I mean, you have meditation, you have breakfast, lunch, dinner, talks, study, practicing together, pujas, a lot of rituals. So, all of those things are happening in a similar way, but it's just a lot of more of it, 11 weeks of it, not a weekend of it, not 10 days. The longest like retreat I've been on with other people was like 10 or 11 days. So 11 weeks, each week is like a day. So it's just a huge amount of spaciousness, and really you just get to know people so well when you're practicing with them and living with them in community. It's just a really amazing experience, and no distractions. So it's just a really, really supportive environment to practice in. It's quite amazing. It's really hard to describe. You have to kind of experience it, but it's just the most supportive environment for just your practice to arise. Yeah.
Was there a sense, in a way, of being sort of carried by the whole thing?
Absolutely, yeah. And especially the team. The team was so experienced, and so they just were so good at holding the space for us and creating this, Buddha field really for us to be practicing in.
Mm-hmm. And did you get up at 6 or 6:30 or?
Well, the first I think the bell was at 6:15. The first meditation was at 7. So if you're in a tent, you could just kind of roll out and, go and, but I always wake up early anyway. So I was waking up at like 6. Yeah.
Yeah. And the day ended after puja in the evening? Probably around 9:30 or 10?
No, a little bit earlier. By like 9:15, 9:30, yeah.
And with the flow of that schedule, the usual meals and breaks and that sort of thing, what was your favorite part of the day?
This sounds really weird, but I loved the pujas, but I was also going to say in the morning we would have coffee and hot milk. So I never thought I would be in Spain in the middle of nowhere having a latte in the morning. So I mean, that was pretty amazing for me. But I think that the thing I really, really loved was the pujas. Like, imagine having a puja or a ritual every single night for 11 weeks. I mean, that has a huge impact. And sometimes I would think, I'm just so tired. I don't think I can do the puja tonight. But I was like, just would go and I would just feel so energized by it. It was just the pujas and the rituals we did were absolutely magical. Yeah.
And what would you say were some of the challenges of being there and the schedule?
Yeah. So one of the things that was challenging was kind of going forth from knowing, like we didn't always know what was going to happen next. So we didn't really. Sure laughing because she went there last year, so she knows. You just don't know what's going to happen next. And for me, that was challenging. I like to, have a sense of control, like know what's going to happen next. And, we would get 24 hours notice or less for something that might be happening. And just, relaxing into that and allowing it and trusting the process and trusting that I could respond. Like, I don't know what's going to happen next and I can respond. So that was definitely a challenge for me. And then the other thing that happened for me on the retreat is I had a flare-up of chronic fatigue that I get sometimes. So for a lot of the retreat, I was extremely fatigued and couldn't do everything that I wanted to do on the retreat. And that was definitely something I had to work with my mind states. So I'm just going to read one of Sangharaj's writings that really came up for me on the retreat was, you do not have to justify your existence by being useful. You yourself are the justification for your existence. And I just realized how much internalized ableism I have, that so much of my worth was tied up in being able to do things and being able to be useful and being able to be in the kitchen working and cleaning up and doing all those things. And then what is my worth if I can't do any of that? What is my worth if other people have to take care of me? And I think like some of that was kind of a surprise to me. I didn't realize how much internalized ableism that I had. And so, I think that it's when I'm acting from a place of trying to justify my usefulness and justify my worth, I can feel really tight, and just how joyful it feels to give from a place of abundance instead of a place of trying to justify my worth. And so I really noticed that a lot of that coming in for me. So it was actually really good that happened, because it brought to my view brought up a lot of these views that I had that I wasn't even aware of. So it was challenging, but it was also really good to practice at the same time. Yeah. And
what was it like to feel the support of the others when those difficult physical conditions were present?
Yeah, I mean, unbelievable. Everyone was incredibly supportive, and I would write them little notes like, "Thank you, Advayasrī. It's my pleasure. I love, it's just, everyone was so joyful. They weren't, acting as if I was a burden, as I feared. They were just really happy to be taking care of me. And also the other thing that helped me a lot was when I was feeling, challenged, I would think of my Sangha and my friends back home that I knew were thinking of me. And I thought about my send-off and the people that were there and how much love I felt from my Sangha. So that was also very supportive.
Great. Yeah. So we know that art is an important part of your practice. Were you able to work on anything while you were there during some of the off times?
I didn't do as much art as I thought I would because of the chronic fatigue that came up. But one of the things we did as a group, which was really fun, was we did mark making. So we just get out all these art materials and sit outside at one of the tables and just play with the art and just using sticks or flowers or anything, any materials we found around, and just make things, like not having to be something with no end in mind, just playing with the paints, which was really fun. But the one thing I did have a chance to do was there was this really beautiful Rupa statue of Vajrasattva that I just loved. And since I didn't have my phone or a camera, I couldn't take a picture of it. So I really, really wanted to draw it. So I did have the opportunity to do some drawings and sketches of it. And then when I came back, I made this painting. I can hold it up later, maybe for people on Zoom, but
yeah.
I didn't do that while I was there. I took the sketches that I made when I was there and came home and made that. Yeah, so I'm very excited about.
And since arriving back, have you been able to touch base with that important dimension of yourself, or are you still sort of dealing with the nuts and bolts of arriving back?
No, I've been doing some art since I came back.
Yeah.
It's pretty well. I worked on that and then a couple other things, and I'm really into book making, so I've been making a puja book. So that's been, it's been really fun.
Ah, great. So coming up to the point in the retreat where you were actually ordained and given a new name, there's a private ordination which involves just you being ordained and your what's called your private preceptor, the person that gives you your name and introduces you to your yidam, to the sadhana or the visualization of the Buddha figure that you're being introduced to in the ordination. And then there's usually some space after that, some days where basically you and your preceptor are the only two people that know what your new name is. And then there's a public ordination where all the names are revealed and the kesas placed around your neck and whatnot. So during that time, which tends to be quite intense and hopefully magical, what was that period like for you?
It was definitely intense and magical, that's for sure. Well, everyone's walking around and everyone's been privately ordained and we're in silence, except for we can talk to our preceptor, but everyone just walking around like radiating, like just so happy. And the preceptors that all came, so there was 13 preceptors that came to ordain everyone. And they're all so joyful to be there and to be doing this significant thing. So it's just a really joyful, amazing time. And I was walking around like saying my name to myself, trying to remember how to say it. And I just, that was fun. And then staring at the blue sky, like you're in silence. We didn't have that many things we had to do. So just staring at the blue sky. And then there was thunder and lightning storms that were rolling through. So there was all this epic thunder like we're having tonight, and lightning. And it just felt like really this mythic realm that I was in. So that was one of my favorite parts of the retreat, actually. And just really loving my name and thinking about what it meant and all the different meanings and the aspiration of it.
What is the meaning of your name?
So my name is Advayasrī. So Advaya means non-dual, and Shri means radiance. So it means the radiance of non-duality. Is that clear?
It's a good one. Good one. When you received it, what did that feel like?
Well, I have so much gratitude to Vera Lila. Vera Lila is the person who gave me my name, my private preceptor. And I just think it's a really beautiful name. I just was like, wow, that's so gorgeous. Like so much gratitude for my name, but also like a little bit of like, what? Like, what? Like, I don't even know what that means. So, a little bit of like this huge thing to live up to, but it is a thing for us to grow into. It's not that, we immediately are embodying that, but it's an aspiration. So I just loved it from the beginning, but also there's a little bit of like, just this aspiration to embody that.
Mm-hmm. Has any is there any sense in the new name of a teaching present in it, or is that kind of in the aspiration.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, I can read you a little bit of what Viralila said when she introduced me to everyone. So what did she say? So she said, concepts are necessary. Every concept you can think of has an opposite. The Dharma as a teaching or doctrine is expressed in terms of concepts. Even reality itself is seen in terms of pairs of opposites. But the experience of reality, all duality is, in the experience of reality, all duality is transcended. Even the duality between duality and non-duality. Reality is non-dual. And I think, like, just to put, that sounds like a lot of words. To put it in more like practical terms, I just like think about, for example, you could take gender as an example. Like, we put everything in a box, like male or female, and there's nothing in between. But the radiance of non-duality is just allowing that whole spectrum of things. It's not just male or female. There's a whole radiance of the reality of things just as they are. And you can think that about, you know, like anything, you know, good or bad. Is something all good or all bad? It's never all good or all bad. There's a whole spectrum of this, the radiance of really just allowing things to be as they are, not covered over by our concepts. You know, and it also reminds me of when we first, one time with my son, and he was like, "Oh, Mom, look at that beautiful blue bird." And I was like, "Oh, it's just a blue jay." And I didn't even look at it. I just gave it a glance and I was like, "Oh, it's just a blue jay," you know. And my concept of a blue jay was that annoying, loud bird that makes a mess at the bird feeder, you know. But he's a small child and he's looking at, when I really looked at it, I'm like, that is a really beautiful bird. Like, but I had this concept about it that completely blocked me from seeing it. And I think we're doing that. For me, the lesson is like, don't do that. Like, don't put things in a box and not look at them. Like, actually allow things to be how they are and really see more deeply and how much the radiance of things shines through. I mean, we are all the radiance of non-duality underneath all of our concepts about ourselves. So I think it's like an uncovering of more and more of how things really are radiant in their essence. So that's quite a practice.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like the sort of reflection that's going to be with you for, the remainder of your practice in this life.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
When I was ordained and I was given my name, by the time I got from the private ordination to the next day when I was able to speak with my preceptor, Shadayu had become Shadaya. And then he corrected me.
Oh, wow.
Because I was repeating it so much. And at some point, a vowel shifted.
Right.
I didn't get it in writing.
Luckily, I had it in writing. I had to keep taking it out of the envelope and looking at it. Like, what's my name again? Yeah, so having it in writing is very helpful.
And what about receiving the sadhana, like receiving a new meditation practice? Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. Well, so the sadhana I took is Vajrasattva, and that's what this painting is of. And I already had a connection with Vajrasattva, where I had some meditative, like sort of dream-like experiences that involved him. So I was really excited about taking on the sadhana of Vajrasattva. I love the mantra of Vajrasattva. It's the whole idea of it as, it's basically about uncovering your true nature and see, I mean, kind of what I was just saying. It's about uncovering your true nature underneath all these ideas and concepts. And so that's, I love it. It's a great practice.
Yeah. And now you're back.
Yeah.
So you, at what point in the retreat were you actually ordained? Was it in the middle or?
Yeah, I actually know that some of the retreat I had no idea what the date was, but somebody wrote on a card. It was June 7th. Okay. Our actual ordination day, and then the retreat was over on July 3rd. So we had 3.5 weeks or almost a month.
Yeah. And so you had time to sort of absorb that experience and finish the retreat, and then a journey home. Did you come right home? Or?
I did, because I wanted to see my granddaughter. I was like, get me on the next plane. Yeah. So I could come meet her.
And what was coming out of retreat like and going back into the world?
Yeah. It was definitely a process of coming back. I mean, after like I think I rode in a car once, like the whole, you don't have your phone, like re-engaging was definitely, I kind of didn't want to let go of that. It was so beautiful and spacious and precious. Like I was so torn. I wanted to like beam home for like a day and see everyone and then beam back there because it's just an amazing, precious, beautiful place. So it was a little bit hard coming back and oh my gosh, the airport when we hit Boston, it was on the 4th of July and it was just, yeah, that was a bit jarring. So I tried to really come back and just, not do too much and not get right on the news or social media and just give myself some space. And I spent some time with my granddaughters, which was really beautiful. So yeah, it's definitely a process to come back to let that beautiful, precious experience. But it's still with, there's no way it's not going to be with me. So it's still with me.
And you've been back just over a month. And reconnecting with people. I know initially you weren't seen very often, but I've noticed in the last 2 weeks I've seen you maybe 3 times. So are we going to continue to see you back in circulation?
I think so. I mean, when I first came back, I had still had some fatigue, and so I was really trying to rest and recover. But at the moment, I'm feeling really well, so I'm out and about. So hopefully that will last, and I can continue to be out and about. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we have an opportunity now for questions from us here and from folks on Zoom.
All right, I'll just hold this up one more time. So this is a painting that I did I actually traced the shadow of the rupa on the wall and then did a painting from it, and then did the drawing of the hands with the vajra and the bell. So that's Vajrasattva. It's gorgeous. Thanks. I'm very happy with it. That's why I brought it to show.
Thanks for bringing it.
And then the other thing I forgot to say is I just really wanted to express my gratitude for just everyone involved that made it possible for me to go, like the team who's led the retreat, and there's a community of people, there's 2 people that live in Spain almost full time to support all the retreats there. And they're living there like year round practically in these same very Spartan conditions. And then my fellow retreatants, and then my Kula year, my Mitra study groups, everyone, there's so many people that I'm so grateful to for making it possible for me to go there. So just wanted to say all that.
Great. Yeah, so questions, if you're here, you can just raise your hand. If you're on Zoom, you'll just want to unmute and ask your question because we can't see all of you.
Is this mixed media painting?
It's pencil drawing and then acrylic paint. My dad might be online. Yeah, doesn't it just ask that?
Advayasrī, thank you so much for what you shared. It's beautiful. Beautiful. It's beautiful what you shared. Really. My question is, what was different between your private ordination and your public ordination?
Yeah, good question. So the private ordination is just you and your private preceptor. And so it's in this really special place. It's really beautiful and secret. And so it's just this really private, beautiful moment where you are committing yourself to the spiritual path. And then the public ordination is really welcoming you into the order with a public preceptor. And my public preceptor, I just have incredible admiration for. Her name's Kulanandi, just an amazing practitioner who I just really look up to. So it's in front of all of us got ordained together, and all the preceptors were there, and the team and the community. So it's a much bigger, public thing where you're being welcomed into the order. So huge celebration publicly, and that's when your name gets revealed. So I found out everyone else's name at the same time. So that was just really joyful. I mean, they're both really joyful, but just different.
what was the adjustment like to the additional precepts going and taking those on, and were there any that were particularly hard?
She's only had them for 2 months.
Well, we were attempting to practice them on the retreat as well. Yeah, I mean, the speech precepts are hard, right? Like, we're talking all the time, so really trying to be mindful of what I say, that's a lot of work. Yeah. That's probably the one that trips. I mean, there's mind precepts as well that I enjoy working with them a lot, but the speech precepts I find really challenging because I just start talking and I'm not always mindful of what I'm saying. So yeah.
What are the additional 5 precepts?
So it's so truthful communication, and then kindly communication, helpful communication, and harmonious communication. So it's kind of breaking it down.
So, question. I think someone said something about you decided to, devote your life to the, spiritual path. Does that mean when you become ordained, do people can be ordained and still do things, in the secular world that are, like a career or?
Yeah, that's for me, one of the attractions of Triratna is that it's not a monastic order. You don't have to go live in a monastery, and that you're bringing this into the world, into your life. So yeah, absolutely. You don't have to give up life in the world. I mean, I think that's what we're trying to do, is bring our practice into the world. That's what I've been doing. Yeah.
Do you find, I understand you've just been back for a short period of time, but do you find coming back people that are close to you act any differently around you or look at you maybe? Is there a different feel? Because they're like, oh my gosh, she just like, she's like up here now.
No, I think they might be like, wow, you did all that. How come you're not, more skillful?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm sure some people, I don't know what everyone is thinking in their own mind. I think a change too is people adjusting to my name, and don't worry about, like, ask me my name as many times as you need to. It's not a problem. That it took me so many times to remember it. So just keep asking. It's a mouthful, to get a new name. I think that is probably the biggest thing that's hard for people. It's this name, adjusting to it, and you're gonna mess up, and it's fine. It's not messing up. It's just learning. You're learning. We're all learning it.
Anybody on Zoom have any questions?
Lila City has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Lila City.
I know Bhante used to give people their sadhana. He'd decide what they would be most beneficial for them. But that's not the way things work now, I understand. And so how was your sadhana selected by you, by Virya Leela, in consult? How did that work for you?
Yeah, I think it was both of us. I mean, I did have some other ideas about things that I might take on, but we just talked about it, and it seemed pretty clear that Vajrasattva was going to be really the one I wanted to take on, and the one that she thought was going to be best for me. So, yeah.
Thank you.
And anyone else on Zoom? Just go ahead and unmute. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you describe how you're paired with your private preceptor?
Oh, you get to choose your private preceptor yourself. So it's someone that you feel close to, who you feel is, and you can ask someone who is not already a private preceptor to become one. So I'm the first person that Virya Leela has ordained. So yeah, anyone, I think you have to be in the order for 10 years before you can become a private preceptor. But if you're in the ordination process, you can just choose who you want. You don't get to choose your public preceptor, but your private one is your own choice.
Looks like Ronald has his hand up. Go ahead, Ronald.
I'm curious, where were your fellow ordinees from? And did they all speak English? Could you communicate with them?
So I was the only one from the US, and then there were 3 women from Germany and an Austrian woman who lives in England, and the rest of them were from Great Britain. Some of the German women had a little bit of difficulty, but actually one of the people on the team was fluent in German and English, so she did a lot of translating. And then the Austrian woman who lives in England also did helped out with the translating. So yeah, some of the German women had studied English specially to go on the retreat. Yeah, yeah, amazing.
Any other questions from Zoom? Oh, go ahead, Eve.
Oh, I just want to know what the age ranges were.
Yeah, so the youngest person, 27, and the oldest person, 74, and then the whole range in between.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
What was your favorite meal? Is there anything really different that you had?
Well, I already said the lattes in the morning. Actually the leader of the retreats, Vajramati, really loved cooking, and she made some amazing desserts for us. So we had this lemon polenta cake dessert that was amazing. I loved it. I love polenta. So we also had polenta, savory polenta for dinner, which was really delicious. And then a walnut bolognese sauce, was really good. Yeah, the food was really good.
Getting hungry.
I was not expecting to have so many delicious desserts. Yeah, and then there were cherry trees. So when the cherries were ripe, it was great fun picking the cherries right off the tree and eating them.
Thank you for that. So we've come to the end of the evening. I just want to thank everyone for coming, both here and on Zoom. And thank you so much, Advayasrī, for agreeing to do this, because it was really super interesting and very helpful, I'm sure, to and inspiring to all of us. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks.